Some lies don't sound like lies at all. They sound calm. They sound reasonable. They sound almost too clean. And that is exactly why they work. You usually feel the lie before you can prove it. Something inside you goes tight. A sentence lands wrong. A detail feels polished instead of real. You replay the moment later. You wonder why it bothered you. Here's what's really happening. A lie often leaks through pressure, timing, and control, not because you can read minds, because the body and the story stop moving together. Most people look for one magic sign, usually the eyes, and miss the larger pattern unfolding right in front of them. The safest way to spot a lie is not to hunt for drama, but to notice mismatch. When words, timing, emotion, and detail stop lining up, your attention should quietly sharpen. That matters because a lie costs more than the false sentence itself. It steals your clarity, bends your choices, and makes you question your own read on people. So by the end, you'll know how to catch the signals without becoming paranoid, reactive, or easy to manipulate. And here's your first defensive edge. Stop asking, are they lying? And start asking, what feels off and what exactly doesn't match? That one shift moves you out of emotion and back into observation. But the tell most people miss is not nervousness. It is control. A liar often works hardest to manage your perception, not just the story itself. Watch for this. Truth usually arrives with natural texture. Lies often arrive with management. The first sign is a mismatch between the size of the question and the size of the answer. You ask something simple, and suddenly the response feels strangely overbuilt, underbuilt, or strangely strategic. A truthful person may pause, think, remember, and answer with the normal rough edges of memory. A liar may give too little to avoid exposure, or far too much to drown you in detail. Both moves create the same defensive fog. You stop evaluating the answer and start processing the performance. That is your cue to slow down instead of speeding up. When an answer feels engineered, ask one calm follow-up and watch what changes. Not the content alone, the rhythm, the confidence, the emotional temperature. A stable memory usually stays stable under simple follow-up. A constructed story often needs constant maintenance. So here's how you take your power back. Ask for the same event in a different order. Ask what happened right before it. Ask what happened right after. Not like an interrogator. Like a grounded person who refuses to be rushed past their own perception. This is where many lies begin to crack. Not because the person suddenly confesses, but because the story loses its natural shape. The second sign is timing that feels unnatural. Some people answer too quickly, as if the response was waiting before the question even finished. Others delay in a way that feels less like remembering and more like building. Neither proves deception by itself, but unusual timing around simple facts deserves attention. Real memory has a certain unevenness. It can pause for the right reasons. A lie often pauses for assembly, or arrives instantly because the speaker prepared the safest line long ago. Here's a concrete example. You ask, "Why didn't you pick up last night?" And the answer arrives almost before you finish breathing. Too polished, too final, no searching, no texture. Then you ask one tiny follow-up, and suddenly the smoothness disappears. That contrast matters more than the first answer. You are not detecting nerves. You are detecting load. A person telling the truth is usually managing recall. A person lying is often managing risk, and risk management leaves patterns. Another clue is selective certainty. Liars often sound extremely certain where certainty helps them, then strangely vague where detail could expose them. Notice the imbalance. The strong parts of the story can feel rehearsed. The weak parts feel blurry, generic, or quickly redirected. That combination should raise your awareness. Someone honest might forget a detail naturally, but they do not usually forget only the dangerous parts. A liar, on the other hand, protects the exact areas where the truth could unravel the whole impression. Watch for absolute language used as armor. Words like never, always, swear, and honestly can be normal, but they also can be verbal smoke. The more a person leans on declarations of honesty, the more you should focus on actual coherence. Truth does not need much advertising, it usually just needs room. This is a sharper way to hear people. Stop being impressed by confidence. Start measuring consistency. Confidence can be practiced. Consistency is harder to fake over time. That is one of the quiet differences between the manipulated and the aware. The manipulated person reacts to tone. The aware person tracks pattern. Tone can pull you in fast. Pattern tells you what is really there. Another lie signal hides inside unnecessary defensiveness. You ask a fair question, and the person responds as if your question itself is the offense. Now the focus shifts. Instead of explaining the issue, they are managing your guilt for bringing it up. That move matters because it pressures you to retreat before clarity arrives. And yes, some truthful people get defensive too. That is why you never judge from one sign. You judge from clusters. Defensiveness plus inconsistency plus selective detail plus pressure on you to back off becomes much more meaningful. Here's what that can sound like in everyday life. You ask a partner about a missing detail, and instead of answering, they say you are overthinking, insecure, or trying to start drama. Notice what just happened. Your question was not addressed, your state was attacked. That is not proof of lying, but it is a strong sign that the conversation is being redirected away from clean verification. A grounded response is simple. Do not defend your right to ask. Repeat the question calmly, then leave space. People who rely on pressure hate calm repetition because it removes the smoke from the room. There's another tell that gives many liars away, and it appears when they think they already have you. Their story stops adapting to reality and starts protecting status. In plain language, they become more concerned with how they look than with helping you understand what happened. That creates odd priorities. They may correct tiny details that make them seem better while skipping the big fact you actually asked about. They may volunteer flattering context. They may remind you of how trustworthy they are. They may point to their image instead of the evidence. When that happens, watch for this question. Are they trying to inform me, or are they trying to manage what I think of them? That question can cut through a surprising amount of noise, because lying is often less about false words and more about controlled perception. Here's a practical defense most people never use. Reduce the emotional temperature of the room. Liars often benefit when you become emotional, rushed, offended, or desperate for immediate closure. The calmer you stay, the fewer handles they have. Slow speech helps. Silence helps. Specific questions help. Even writing down details later helps. You do not need a dramatic confrontation. You need clean observation and enough steadiness to keep the pattern visible. That steadiness protects you in offices too. A coworker who lies rarely starts with a huge deception. They start by shaping small narratives about delays, responsibilities, and who said what. Pay attention when accountability constantly blurs around one person. One week it is confusion. Next week it is miscommunication. Then it is someone else's fault. A single incident may mean nothing. A repeated fog around facts means everything. If you've caught yourself missing signs like this before, you're not alone. Tell me below. What matters is not catching every lie instantly. What matters is refusing to keep ignoring the same pattern once it becomes visible. Here's the sharper reframe. The goal is not to become a human lie detector. The goal is to become harder to mislead. That difference protects your peace. You do not need certainty to set boundaries. You do not need a confession to step back from someone whose words and patterns keep colliding. This matters because many people stay trapped waiting for perfect proof. Meanwhile, the inconsistency keeps draining their trust, time, and emotional energy. You are allowed to respond to repeated mismatch. That is not paranoia. That is discernment. Another sign of deception is when the story changes shape depending on what feels safest in the moment. Maybe the person first says something never happened. Later it happened, but it was not serious. Later still, it was your misunderstanding. That sequence is important. Denial, minimizing, reframing. Not always, but often, those shifts appear when the original version can no longer hold. Watch the movement. A truthful account can gain detail over time. A deceptive one often changes its emotional strategy. First, they block the door. Then they make the issue sound small. Then they make you feel unreasonable for still caring. That progression tells you the pressure point exists. Here's an everyday text message version. You ask why someone canceled suddenly. They say they were exhausted. Later, they mention being out with friends. When you ask about the mismatch, the issue becomes your tone. See the pattern. The problem keeps relocating away from the contradiction and onto you. That relocation is one of the oldest tricks in the book. Here's how you shut it down. Name one contradiction without adding he. Keep it short. Those two things don't match. Then stop talking. Do not rush to rescue the silence. Silence is useful because it forces the other person to carry their own explanation, and that is where strain often becomes visible. One more signal hides in borrowed emotion. Sometimes a lie sounds emotionally correct, but personally disconnected, almost like the speaker is wearing the reaction they think fits. The words say regret. The timing says calculation. The face says performance. Again, not one sign, a cluster. What you are noticing is congruence. When an experience is real, emotion, detail, and pacing usually belong to the same event. When a story is manufactured, those pieces can feel assembled from separate shelves. You may hear the right words without feeling the right alignment. Trust that signal enough to investigate, not enough to explode. There's also a reason lies can feel weirdly exhausting. Your brain is trying to resolve conflict between what is being said and what is being signaled. That internal friction drains you. You keep searching for the missing fit. Manipulative people often benefit from that fatigue. The more tired and confused you become, the easier you are to steer. So a powerful defense is not just catching lies. It is exiting confusing conversations before confusion becomes compliance. You can say, I want to revisit this later when things are clearer. That sentence protects you more than people realize. It breaks urgency. It restores thinking time, and it prevents you from being cornered into accepting a weak explanation just to end the discomfort. This is the identity shift that matters. You are not here to win every verbal battle. You are here to stay clear. Clear people are harder to deceive because they do not trade their perception for quick peace. They notice, they verify, they step back when needed, and they do not let someone else's certainty erase their own pattern recognition. There is one more defensive insight most people learn too late. A liar often studies your tolerance before they test your intelligence. They want to know how much inconsistency you will excuse, how much pressure you will absorb, and how quickly you doubt yourself. That means your boundaries matter even before the truth is fully proven. When you stop rewarding vagueness, sudden outrage, and moving stories, weak deception loses oxygen. You do not have to accuse. You do not have to label. You simply stop cooperating with confusion. Ask clean questions. Notice clusters. Track changes. Stay calm. And if the pattern keeps repeating, adjust your access, you trust, and your expectations. That is not cruel. That is self-protection. Because at the end of the day, the biggest lie is rarely the sentence itself. It is the pressure to ignore what you can already feel. It is the invitation to betray your own clarity so the other person can keep control of the narrative. You do not need to accept that invitation. Watch the mismatch. Watch the timing. Watch the defensiveness. Watch the timing. Watch the need to manage your perception. Those patterns will tell you more than eye contact miss ever could. And once you see them clearly, you stop asking the wrong question. Not, can I prove they lied beyond all doubt, but what does this pattern say about the safety of trusting this person with my peace? That question changes everything. It brings the focus back to your judgment, your limits, and your power. If this sharpened your radar, stay with Onyx mind, because the people who protect their peace usually see the game before it closes. And if you want the next layer, watch the next video where we break down the subtle ways people make you doubt your own memory. The more clearly you see these patterns, the harder you become to control. Stay calm, stay observant, and stay on your own side.